company in the world to provide distributed control Wi-Fi. What that basically means is that we eliminated the controller to only have access points. We have no central point of control. Everything's completely distributed and, of course, managed through the cloud. So along with enterprise cloud networking, those two technologies together help to create a simpler, more secure, more scalable, and generally less complex way of building your network. But where our innovation comes in now is looking beyond just this guarantee of good Wi-Fi. Instead, what we focus on is providing a platform for our customers to leverage and utilize their Wi-Fi data to achieve value beyond just connectivity. So that's the first part. The second key factor is the growth that is reflected by our solid financial position. Ultimately, our innovation has come from the foundation of our company. We were founded in Silicon Valley, funded by Kleiner Perkins, and we've continually used our growth and success to further fuel and fund innovation. The final thing that our growth reflects is the leadership position we've achieved in the marketplace. Global technology companies such as Dell, Apple selected Aerohive as their partner to deliver wireless, and that's testament not just to our technology, but of course our vision and belief as a company. But most importantly, this growth is reflected by the success we've brought to over 20,000 customers worldwide across all major industries. You can see from the slide here the versatility across sector, from top retailers that place huge emphasis and importance on data capture and personalizing customer engagement, to central government and global financial institutions who focus more on ensuring secure and reliable connectivity. But at this stage, I guess the question to ask is, why did all these organizations choose Aerohive as their desired technology? What was it about us? And we believe there are three key factors about Aerohive that answers this question. The first being great Wi-Fi, the second being the power of cloud networking, and third being apps and insights, which is a piece I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit about, and hopefully should give you that different perspective that we mentioned in our emails. So at this point, I'll pass you over to my colleague Ben Holland, who I can tell is just itching to get out of his seat and start presenting. So without any further delay, Ben, over to you.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Trevor. So yeah, well, Ben, I'm part of the UK sales team here at Aerohive alongside Trevor, and I want to talk to you about cloud networking first and foremost, and then the great Wi-Fi, the bread and butter of the Aerohive solution. Those are the three pillars, along with apps and insights, that make up the Aerohive solution. So without further ado, cloud networking. Cloud networking to Aerohive is really what makes deploying, managing, and troubleshooting your access points, switches and routers very, very simple. It's been the focal point of our solution from day one, and our latest Hive Manager NG platform is a product of over 10 years of research and development. We truly believe it caters for all organizations. To many organizations who only require a single SSID with limited control, required to multinational and multi-site companies with thousands of employees looking to control users based on what role they have in the organization, what device they're using, location, maybe time of access, and so on. So Hive Manager NG provides this granular configuration progression throughout. In terms of support as well, it reduces the support burden on IT teams. We often find, speaking to many of our customers, especially with multiple sites across the country or even across the globe, there is a support burden on that IT team. If there are issues within the wireless network or on a switch, having to go to an individual site to manage and support that issue can be quite time consuming. And with this cloud networking, it really gives you that ability to troubleshoot, to identify issues, sometimes before they even happen on the network. That way to increase network efficiency throughout the organization. In terms of scale as well, the Aerohive solution really provides this effortless scale. Many of our customers start off with one access point, and as Trevor mentioned, we don't have a physical LAN controller. In fact, there's no controller within the Aerohive solution whatsoever. So when it comes to deploying the Aerohive solution, it's simply plug and play. We send you out the access point. It's already linked up to your Hive Manager account. you plug that access point into the Ethernet port, and it will automatically find its Hive Manager management platform. You then can build that configuration. In fact, you can go to cloud.aerohive.com right now, set up a Hive Manager NG account, and start building the configuration that suits your organization. Once that configuration is built, you plug the APs in and you can start pushing that configuration out to those access points and also switches as well. As I said, many of our customers started off with one access point and they've grown it out to tens of thousands. There is no limit when it comes to the number of access points that we can manage within a Hive Manager. We simply have customers with tens and tens of thousands of access points deployed across the globe. And what makes it really easy is when it comes to deploying, you can deploy multiple sites at the same time. The Aerohive Cloud Platform comes in two different flavors as well. So we don't just cater for our customers that require or would like public cloud service. We also have a private cloud offering as well, typically used much between our financial and legal customers who prefer not to have that management within the public cloud. There really is no difference between the two solutions. One simply sits within your own data centers on premise. Both solutions look exactly the same from a management and reporting point of view. It really comes down to what you as an organization prefer. So moving on to the Great Wi-Fi piece. This has been the focal point of the Aerohive solution. Of course it has. We're a Wi-Fi company. And when we came into the market in 2006, we had a very, very disruptive technology. And 10 years later, that technology and the basis to that technology really hasn't changed much. It's been much a case of other wireless vendors moving into the same direction that Aerohive are already in, and almost playing catch up with Aerohive. So I just want to give you a bit of background to the evolution of Wi-Fi. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with many of these points on here. And it really came from when Wi-Fi was ratified in the late 90s, and what many people still use today at home is autonomous access points. So we first provided companies and organizations with autonomous APs. Massive downside to these APs is you, of course, have to go into the individual access to manage, to configure, to troubleshoot that access point. So from a scalability and an enterprise perspective, they really weren't that great at the time. But it was fine because at that time, wireless was a nice to have. Nowadays, it's not so much a nice to have. It is expected within organizations. So that was why in 2001, a gentleman called Bob O'Hara pioneered the wireless LAN controller. That gave us the ability to manage all of our access points from that single point of control. So if we're a company or an organization with tens or hundreds of access points, it made it a lot easier to manage those access points. There were, of course, downsides to that controller in the sense that it does, of course, act as a single point of control. It acts as a bottleneck. If all of our access points have to communicate back to this single point, it causes latency on the network. Many customers, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will still be using controller-based architectures today. But wireless as a whole has moved on a lot since then, and 15 years ago, when Bob O'Hara pioneered the controller, and some vendors have started to move that controller around. So whether it's putting that physical LAN controller into the cloud, for example, there's vendors out there that can do that, and also putting that controller into an individual access point and effectively having a master AP which manages the other access points on the network. But what Aerohive did when we came into the market in 2006, we completely removed this wireless LAN controller. Instead of having this central point of control, we distributed all of the control through using control protocols into each and every access point. So the intelligence is completely distributed across the network. There's no one access point in the network that has any more control than any other access points. So when you plug an AP in, you have a fully featured enterprise-grade network without the need for any wireless LAN controllers on your network at all. So Not only does it make it more reliable from the sense that there's no single point of failure on the network and there's no bottlenecking occurring on the network, it's also much cheaper to deploy as well. So if you have lots of sites, you don't have to have a controller at each site to plugging the access points into those locations where you require wireless access. And then, of course, with Aerohive, we have that cloud management that sits on top of those access points and gives you the management and the visibility of your entire wireless and wired network. I will mention that cloud management, that's not a cloud controller. There's no reliance from that Hive Manager management platform at all on the network. So, for example, you lost connection to your management platform, there'd be no loss in features or functionality on the network whatsoever. So in terms of how our distributed control works, and this is, I guess, the one Aerohive slide in this deck that has been with Aerohive since day one. As I said, the architecture behind the solution really hasn't changed. Instead of having a physical controller, we use control protocols. So these control protocols, to think of it simply, is just a way of the access points communicating with one another, sharing information on the clients that are connecting, the environment to which they're sat in, and communicating with one another on the network. So once you have one access point, you plug it into your core network. That, of course, doesn't have to be Aerohive switches. There are significant benefits of having Aerohive switches, of course. You have a fully featured enterprise-grade network. It's got all the security. It's got a layer 7 firewall on every single access point. You can prioritize those applications as you wish, and as Keith will show you in more detail in a moment. Once you go and add more access points into your Aerohive wireless network, you then start to create this hive, and I guess where the Aerohive name came from, and the access points you can see here are communicating with one another and sharing the information with one another. They have the radio resource capabilities as well. So from a deployment point of view, you can see here, if I go back a step, the coverage of the access points actually decreases as we add more access points. This is to make sure, I mean, of course, as many of you will know, the 2.4 radio channel can get quite congested. So the access points are able to continually monitor the air to make sure there's no co-channel or co-channel interference or co-channel contention anywhere on the network. So we decrease the coverage to make sure there's no interference, but also we get the best performance possible on the network. As we go and connect a device or a user to the wireless network, we can see here the access points are actually starting to share the security and the authentication information of this user with the neighboring access points on the network. What this means is you get a layer 2 and a layer 3 roam. So when a user is roaming around the network and they're moving from one access point to another access point, that handover is very, very fast. It's in fact under 0.02 second handover. So if you've got any voice applications or video applications on the network, it's a completely seamless roam. If you were to lose connection to a switch or an Ethernet cable was to go down, the access points recognize that through their control protocols, and they would simply reroute around that point of failure. So it's almost like a self-healing mesh in the way that it works. It works very, very similar to the way that the internet works and the protocols that the internet uses, in the sense that it's an OSPF type protocol. So it'll always take the shortest and fastest route around a point of failure on the network. So as this device roams around, we can see that the security information of that user moves with it. So it will only ever sit with the neighboring access points. There's no need, obviously, for that authentication information of the user to reside with access points that it will never roam to. That simply congests the network. So we only share the information with its one hot neighbor. We can also mesh on the network as well. So if you have areas within your organization that are particularly hard to get Ethernet cable to, that might be listed buildings, for example, we can simply plug an access point into the mains and provide a mesh link from a neighboring access point to give that wireless AP connectivity. Excuse me. So moving on, I just want to quickly talk to you about one of the features of Aerohive, probably our biggest USP, and why so many enterprise organizations choose Aerohive over other vendors. And it's what we call private pre-shared keys. So just to give you a bit of background into authentication, there are, of course, a number of different ways you can authenticate users, from having a pretty unsecure network with an open network, all the way through to Active Directory for your corporate users, which many of you will use. We also have pre-shared key. So pre-shared key, as you're all aware, you use it at home. It provides you with a key to get onto the network. It's a key which everyone uses, and it's the same key for all users and all devices. It's very, very simple to use. All devices support it. However, it has many disadvantages to it as well. It really gives us no visibility of who's doing what on the network. We can't see what different users are doing. If we want to revoke a pre-shared key, we have to remove it and revoke it from every user and then provide a new key. That key can be given out to people within the organization, maybe guests that we don't want to get hold of or we don't want to allow access to on the network. Obviously, with pre-shared key, you have no real way of controlling who's coming onto the network. So what Aerohive have developed, and it's been developed for about 10 years, is what we call private pre-shared key. Now, private pre-shared key gives you the ability to give individual users and individual devices their own unique pre-shared key. So we can tie a private pre-shared key, for example, to a MAC address. So maybe in your organization, this typically we find used for BYOD devices and guest users. When a user comes onto the network, we're able to administer them a private pre-shared key. And Keith will show you exactly how easy it is to administer these private pre-shared keys to our users on the network. We give the private pre-shared key to a guest user. It's then tied to that device, and we would drop that device into a user profile that is already pre-configured, maybe based on who that user is, what device it is, what location, what time of day they're coming onto the network, and then we give them access based on that user. So it really gives us the ability to, it's almost like having an Active Directory in the sense that we have visibility of who's coming onto the network without the burden of the complexity in setting up Active Directory. Using private pre-shared key, it works on the same technology as pre-shared key. Every device supports it, so if you've got IoT, Internet of Things devices on the network, it works as well. We can tie it to specific devices. We can allow access to, or users access to a number of different devices. And if we want to revoke a key from a specific user or a guest, we can revoke that key just from that individual user. So it's really, it gives you the balance in between pre-shared key and Active Directory that many organizations crave. And it really gives you the visibility of exactly who's doing what on the network as well. So last couple of slides from myself. This is our access point portfolio that we have currently. Most people nowadays we speak to are looking at 802.11ac. I mean, from a price point, it is at the same price point as N nowadays, so there really is no need to look at the older standard of access points. Within our portfolio, we have it starts with the flagship AP130, which is our 2x2 access point. And that runs all the way through to our AP1130, which is our external access point. Following on from this meeting, we would like to discuss with you in more detail around your requirements in order to position an access point that is best for you guys to trial. If you're a retailer, then the AP130 will normally suffice. We tend not to have many 3x3 capable laptops connecting in retail environments. So for smartphones and tablets connecting, that 2x2 access point is perfectly suitable. For enterprise deployments where we do have lots of laptops that are 3x3 capable connecting, we would tend to recommend either the AP230 or the AP250. 250 is one that I'm going to mention in a little bit more detail now. So this is our latest access point that we've brought to market. It's our Wave 2 802.11ac access point. You may have heard of Wave 2 in recent times and the benefits that it can bring to your organization. So I'm just going to touch upon one of the benefits now, and that's multi-user MIMO. So this is really the next big step or the next big development in Wi-Fi networking and wireless access points. And what multi-user MIMO allows organizations and allows our access points to do is to have multiple communications with devices at the same time. So whereas before with Wave 1 AC and 802.11n and all of the industry standards before that, our access points could only, or the industry's access points could only communicate with a single device at any one time. With our AP250 and the functionality of multi-user MIMO, we're now able to have conversations with multiple clients at the same time. So this really provides significant increases in capacity on your wireless network. So use cases for this may be if you've got a high density environment within your organization, what we do is we put multiple AP250s in, and we're able to give both radios on that access point. We're able to turn 5 gigahertz radios onto both the radios on that access point. So instead of having a 2.4 and 5 gigahertz radio on the AP, we now have 2 5 gig radios. So we're having dual 5 gig. So what that means is we're able to increase the capacity on the network. So we might have many of our access points in the network, and most of the clients nowadays are on 5 gigahertz, and it's a less congested channel. We can have more access points in a given area because there's less interference on the network. We're able to turn both radios to 5 gigahertz and have increased the capacity significantly, have more devices connecting and more throughput on that access point. So this is very unique to Aerohive. I don't believe there's any other vendors doing something similar to us. It's software selectable radios. So for high density environments, the performance increases are extremely significant over our competitors in the marketplace. So I'm now going to hand you back over to Trevor, who's going to talk to you around the third pillar and now what is really differentiating Aerohive over other wireless vendors out there, and that's the applications and insights.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ben. So, yeah, a very important component that we wanted to talk to you about is this third piece, and it's arguably where we're seeing the market going today. It's the open API platform stuff. I'm sure you are already aware of what APIs are and how they work, but in case you're not, essentially what it's centered around is leveraging data collected from the Wi-Fi to increase business value, whether that includes gathering more data and making smarter decisions, or building applications and finding new ways of engaging with customers or connecting employees. The possibilities and opportunities will be there. We just want to make sure you have the platform to be able to access those opportunities. But how it works on a slightly more granular level is, on the edge, we collect, say, 1 million data points per second. Now, typically, this data that's collected by the Wi-Fi, by the access points, have historically always gone to waste. It's never been utilized. It's never been used to anyone's advantage. But this is exactly what the API platform now does. It gets processed in the microservices and then segmented into whatever is relevant in the API section. For example, identity info, location info, etc. Hive Manager is then the application you would use to access that information. So although our management platform is a management platform on the face of it, it's also an important piece of APIs. But what's good about the APIs is that you have the opportunity to work with vendors or partners to build applications. Because normally if you wanted to work with a vendor, you'd have to match up your codes, which be quite tricky, and then another vendor comes along and you have to do the same thing all over again. So what our APIs do is it gives you the ability to speak the same language as everyone. So as you may know, retailers across the world are constantly moving forward and evolving the ways in which they serve their customers. People are no longer just walking into stores and simply making transactions. there's been a massive increase in things like personalized connectivity, personalized engagement. In the workspace, specifically for enterprise, it's more about how to connect employees and how to manage connectivity once connected. So there are different ways in which different sectors and organizations are utilizing this. Some retailers, for instance, retail, are now looking to provide additional services on top of their main service. So using connectivity or data collected to experience. But how does that actually work in practical terms, and how does it look? If I was to take one of our customers, for example, again in the context of retail, what Clarks did, they recognized the old picture and they wanted to increase engagement in the store. So what they did was they started to leverage mobile devices by using them as a means of interaction and providing more services through the Wi-Fi. For example, we built a reference app with them called Hive Pass. It welcomes you into the store, notifies you of discounts when you're nearby, walking past alternative stores, and so forth. It's been a very effective way of marketing for them as a company, as well as providing this service and a loyalty program as well for existing customers. From a slightly different perspective, another one of our customers, Nando's, they were more concerned with logistics and using the data collected from a logistical standpoint to make smarter decisions. So I don't know if any of you have Nando's, but if you are, you'll know that there's a lot of queuing time involved outside of the store sometimes, and also inside of the store. So Nando's want to develop an application to monitor queuing time to see whether or not they need to perhaps increase floor space or change table layout. Generally, again, using this information collected by the Wi-Fi to make smart business decisions. One of our enterprise customers, Deloitte, for instance, global organization with lots of meeting rooms across the world. Whenever a meeting room gets booked, doesn't always get used. They lose a lot in the form of electricity and gas. So they want to use the Wi-Fi to automate the usage of meeting rooms. If a meeting room does not get used, picked up by the Wi-Fi, and the lights get automatically turned off. That would be a way for them of getting a better return on investment globally. So there are many different ways in which the Wi-Fi data collected by the Wi-Fi is looking to be used by customers and organizations. We can help you develop applications. We have a team of over 800 developers across the world who are constantly looking at developing apps. And of course, we open. If you have developers or you have partners who look to develop apps to change the way your business works, again, you have the opportunity to do so on our platform. So to conclude this point and everything that Ben and I have discussed, as you've seen through our great Wi-Fi and our cloud services, you have a simple, secure and scalable network guaranteed. Your connectivity is ensured, but what can you do with all of these connected devices and users? It's important to start thinking beyond just IT value and business value. If not today, is it perhaps something you'll need to think about in a few years? We believe so, and that's why we're leading the way to make sure we're providing our customers with an opportunity to invest as opposed to just an opportunity to purchase. So on that note, I will pass you over to Keith, who's one of our esteemed engineers, and he'll be doing this the management demo now. Afterwards, if you have any questions, please send them across Keith's way. Please feel free to bombard him, actually. I like to see him sweat, so he'll be the man answering the questions at the end. So over to you, Keith.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Can you all see my screen? Fantastic. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. My name is Keith McIntyre, and I am one of the Inside Systems engineers here at Aerohive Networks. Today I'm just going to give you an overview of the management platform. Some of you may have seen this before, some of you may not have seen it. So if you do have any questions, there is the comments box, which should be on the right-hand side, which you can type into should you have any questions, and we'll try and address them at the end. So before I go through the actual management platform, I just want to touch on something that Ben discussed earlier on, and that's private pre-shared key. Something that we've got at the moment, which we've just released, which is available on the Apple Store for iPad, is a guest registration or visitor registration kiosk app. What this application does is it allows you to simply onboard guests onto your network. So the great thing is they can have this at the reception area of your organization. It can be based on an iPad. The guest comes in, they type in their name, they then type in the company that they work for. They then type in their email address. That can be any email address. It can be a corporate email address, or it can be any kind of generic email address like a Gmail or a Hotmail address. They then simply type in their phone number. If they're not too keen on sharing their phone number, then they can simply press the skip button down on the right-hand side, and that will basically ignore the phone number, and it will take them through onto the next step. Once they've done that, once they've registered and they've typed in all of the details, you will then see that they'll be presented with this screen, which is the information to connect to the wireless network. So you can see at the top here we have the wireless network name, which would be the guest registration SSID that they would connect to. They then have the password, which is their private pre-shared key, and that key is unique to them. So no one else will have the same key. And again, I'll go into detail as to why that is beneficial in the meeting. On the left-hand side, you can see we have a QR code. Now, this is only available on Android at the moment, but what that does is that allows anyone with an Android device to simply scan that QR code, and then that onboards all of the wireless information onto their device. So it onboards the SSID information and also the private pre-shared key. That then eliminates the need for them to have to manually configure anything. Once they scan that QR code, they're then straight away onboarded onto the wireless network with ease and no hassle there at all whatsoever. Down the bottom, you can also see we have the ability to print. Now, one of the great things about this is that you can print it off and use it as a lanyard. So if you do have guests and you can print that off, they can then put it into a lanyard and they can walk around with their name on that. They can also have the private pre-shared key emailed to them, or you can have it SMS'd. So I just wanted to go through that. I think that's a really great way to onboard guests onto the network. So this is the Aerohive management platform. When you log into the interface for the first time, the first screen that you will be presented with is the health screen. Now, one of the great things that you can see about this already is that it's Google Maps integrated. The benefit of that is that if you do have distributed sites, it gives you the flexibility to see exactly where issues are, no matter how many sites you have. So you can see at the moment we have a site in Portland, and we also have a site down here in San Jose. Because we have two sites, the scale is zoomed out. If you were to have one site, then you would simply be zoomed into wherever that site is. Similarly, if you have multiple sites around the world, then when you log into the health screen for the first time, you will see all of those sites on one screen. The health screen is simply a network health summary. Now, we know that it can be quite difficult when you log into any management platform to try and isolate where issues might be on your network. This is why we've developed the health screen as a page that you land on when you log into the interface. We know that when you have issues on your network, you want to identify and resolve what those issues are straight away. So you can see on the left-hand side, we have 5 different metrics. These metrics give you an overall health score. So you can simply click on those issues. You will be then taken to the specific site where those issues are. Again, as I said, if you do have multiple sites, then you will see a scaled out view and you will see all the sites where those issues are prominent. You can then drill down further, so you can actually see where the access point is on your floor plan. You can see exactly where the issue is. You can then send a team to go and resolve the issue and take the necessary action that might be required. Moving on to the monitor section. Now, the monitor section is basically a complete overview of all of the devices in your network. Now, not only do Aerohive provide wireless, but we also provide wired switching as well, and we also integrate with Dell. So we also allow Dell N-Series switches to be managed from within our Aerohive Hive Manager. So this monitor section is where you would see all of those devices. You can also see on the left-hand side, again, I go back to the distributed sites. talk, but if you do have multiple sites, then you can simply drill down to a specific site or a specific floor. When you do that, the table updates dynamically and it will show you all of the hardware that you have within your network for that particular area. As well as the devices, you can also see any clients. You can see what clients are currently connected to your network or have been connected to your network. And again, you can also see what users are on your network as well. Moving on to the plan section. Now the plan section, when you do configure an Aerohive access point for the first time, the plan section is generally the first place you would start. This is where you would go and upload your floor plans and detail your business building. So you can see here, this is our headquarters in California. This shows you the second floor in our Milpitas office. These are all of the access points that we have within our building. You can upload your own floor plan. You can then draw the interior environmental element. So if you do have any brick walls, any walls, any dry walls, etc., etc., this is where you would go and you would define that within this floor plan. You can also view a heat map. So this will show you the RSSI signal propagation from each access point. And as well as that, you can also see various channel information and any interference that might be prominent on your network. One thing that I really like about this section, which is something that I've used before, is the real-time clients. So what this does is this uses triangulation to show you where any devices are that are connected to your wireless network. So you simply go to Real, click on Clients. You can see that we do have one dedicated user who's in the office. It must be about 2 o'clock in the morning their time. What this does is this uses triangulation from the access points. So it uses the RSSI signal propagations to determine exactly where those clients are located. Moving on to the configure section. Now the configure section is where you would configure your network, define all of your wireless networks. You can see here we have 2 policies. I'm going to show you our corporate SSID on our corporate wireless network. It's really, really simple to create your own SSID. You simply click on the Add button. You then click on all other SSIDs, and you then get all of these options to create your own SSID to define the information that you want to configure for your network. Similarly, from a guest perspective, we've now created this simplified guest workflow, which is really, really simple. It's a really quick way just to create a guest SSID should you need to. You simply click on the Add, click on the guest icon. You define the SSID name, and again, it's really straightforward. It tells you exactly what it is you're creating. So if I was to create this network policy now in this SSID, it would just simply be guests can access a network without logging on, without doing anything. Similarly, if you want them to self-register, then you can simply select the self-register icon. We also then have this employee approval. Now, what employee approval is when a guest comes onto your network, sometimes you don't want them just to be able to self-register and log straight into the network straight away. You might want the person who they're visiting to then give approval for them to access the network. With employee approval, what they have to do is if you create an SSID with this defined, they have to specify an email address from within your domain. So within your organization, they have to specify an email address when they register. If they don't specify their email address, they won't be able to proceed, and they won't be able to then generate the private pre-shared key. Once they've specified that email address, the person that they're visiting will then get an email. The email will say, this person has registered onto the network. Do you approve or deny them? Once they've approved them, the email will then come through to the email address that they're registered with. Similarly, if they have an SMS, will come through to their phone, and they will then be able to access the network as required. So again, it gives you real control about how guests are actually onboarding onto your network, and it gives you that control back so you know exactly who is onboarding and who is doing what. Because one of the things you don't want from a large organization is having people connect to the network and you don't even know who they are. Moving on to the applications. Now, this is something that Ben mentioned earlier on in the webinar. We do currently have 1,300 and counting applications that we monitor. Now, what this does is we use a deep packet inspection engine to inspect the packets, and we can tell from those packets exactly what the client is accessing. So exactly what applications or web services that client is accessing, we can register what those are. So from a guest perspective, if you do have guests that are coming onto the network, you want to block them or you want to check what they're doing, then you can simply use this to find out exactly what it is that they are doing. The great thing about this is that you can add your own custom applications should you want to. So if you do have any applications that are specific to your business, you can simply click on the add button and you can create an application, and that will then allow our access points to inspect those applications as well. Now again, one thing that Ben mentioned earlier on when it comes to private pre-shared key is user profiles. Now I just want to go through user profiles very quickly because I think they're a really powerful way of controlling exactly who has access to what on your network. So you can see down here we have a couple of user profiles. This can be either for guests, it can be for a different portion of your business, it can be for contractors, finance, sales, whoever it is, you can create a user profile for them. What this does is this allows you to control exactly what those people who are in that user profile have access to. So from a firewall perspective, if you want to block certain applications, then you can do that. Any people in this user profile, if you were to select the application and block it, they won't be able to access that application. And again, that is only specific to any users that are within this user profile. Similarly, if you want to apply any quality of service, then you can do that within this user profile. We also have the ability to have an availability schedule. Bit of a tongue twister there. Now what the availability schedule does is this allows the user profile to only be available during, again, if you say, for example, have any contractors that are coming in between, say, 9 and 5:30, you might want them to connect to the network only between those specific times. So what you would do is you would create a contractor user profile, you would put those users within that user profile, and you would then set up an availability schedule that would only be available between 9 o'clock in the morning and 5:30 p.m. at night. What that will do is they will still be able to see the SSID, so they will still be able to see that the SSID is broadcasting, but because they're a part of that user profile that isn't available before 9:30 and isn't available after 5:30, they simply won't be able to connect to the network. Another thing that I'm just going to quickly touch on is the users. Now, one thing that we have is the receptionist view. Now, this is a great way to, if you do have any receptionists and you do have guests that come into your organization and you want a receptionist simply to create them a private pre-shared key, we have a specific view which is available just for them. We know that you perhaps don't want to give the receptionist full access to your management interface. I know that they probably wouldn't do anything on purpose, but sometimes accidents do happen. If you give them more control to things that they don't actually need, then unfortunately some things can happen. This is why we've created the receptionist view. And what that simply does is when they log in, they don't see any of these icons at the top apart from configure and users. And then they have this option on the left-hand side for users. This is where they would then go, and this is where they would then create the user that they want to onboard onto the network. Again, it's very self-explanatory. They type in the name, the organization, very similar to the kiosk app that I showed you earlier on. And again, you then have these user groups, which defines what user groups those users are going to be a part of. Moving on to the dashboard. So I just briefly mentioned about the applications that we use and the deep packet inspection engine that we use within Aerohive. This is really great for the dashboard. Now, the dashboard is kind of a 10,000-foot view of your network. It shows you exactly who is doing what at any time. So you can see here we have one application which is called Aerohive Backup. This is a custom application that we have created because it's something that we use which is specific to Aerohive. As I said, if you do have any applications that are unique to your business, then you can simply create them from the application side of the management interface, and that will then show up within this dashboard view. Another great thing about this is that if you do want to see, say for example, who's streaming media, maybe for example, they're doing something that you're not really that happy with, or you just want to basically know who is doing what. You can see by clicking on the streaming media or by clicking on social networking, whichever segment it is that you want to see, you can then select that. This then gives you the top application. When you select the top application, you can then scroll down. You can see the last week, so I can select the last 7 days. This will show me all of the unique clients who have been using that specific application and it also tells me the network usage. So again, it gives you real control and it allows you to completely control who is doing what and who is active on your network at any one time. This relates back now to what I mentioned about the user profiles, because you then have the option to completely control who is doing what, and should you want to, you can block them and stop them from accessing various applications should you need to. The dashboard view also allows you, as I said earlier on, it allows you to go down to a specific site. So at the moment, I'm still only viewing the second floor for the Milpitas office, but if I was to select all of our sites down the left-hand side, all of the tables update dynamically. It then shows you all of the unique clients, it shows you the top access points, and it also shows you the top wireless clients that are on your network. We also have a report section. Now the report section allows you to run various reports on your network. You can simply click on add. We have a PCI DSS report which allows you to see whether your wireless network is PCI compliant. That is vital if you are processing credit card transactions. You need to be PCI compliant to do that. So we have a simple report that if you were to run that, that would tell you whether you are PCI compliant or not. Moving on to the troubleshoot section. Now the troubleshoot section along with the health section is a new section that we recently introduced to our Hive Manager NG interface. The troubleshoot section is simply a means to reduce the burden that the IT team sometimes have. We know that it can be quite frustrating, especially when you have users who are phoning up and they're saying, hey, I can't connect to the wireless network, and you're trying to go through troubleshooting steps to exactly find out what the issues are, why they can't onboard. Quite a lot of the time, it's simply that they're just not typing their password incorrectly, especially if you have passwords that can be changed. Say, for example, you've integrated with Radius. They might have simply changed their password because the password expiration has come up and they've simply forgotten that they've changed that. When you're on the phone to the IT team, the users can be pretty adamant that they've not changed their password or that they're typing their password in wrong. With the troubleshoot tool, you can simply click on the MAC address of the client that is having issues connecting. It then gives you a description of the issue, and it gives you a suggested remedy. So if they are typing their password in wrong, the description will simply be user is typing the incorrect password, and the suggested remedy will put the correct password in. It's really as simple as that. We do have this take action button. Now what this does is this allows you to mark any issues that you've done as resolved. The cool thing about that is that if you do have an issue that you've resolved which might have been particularly complex, or it's something that you want to share with your fellow IT team members, you can simply click on resolved. You can type the comments in that you used to resolve the issue, and then you can send an email to anyone in your team or anyone that you want to explain what the issue was and how you resolved that issue. Similarly, if you want to escalate an issue, so if there is an issue on the network which is prominent, which you're not sure how to resolve, maybe it's something that's out of your remit, so you want to escalate it to maybe a level 2 engineer or an IT manager, you can do that exactly the same way as the resolution. Now the last thing I'm just going to quickly touch on is our help feature. Now the help feature is something which I think is really, really great. It's context aware, so when you do click on the help feature, it takes you to the exact portion of the help file, because Hive Manager knows exactly where you are. So if I was to go back to the configure section, I was to then click on the help function, it then takes me straight to the configure part of the help section because it knows that's where I was within Hive Manager. We also have a feedback button, and one cool thing that I'm going to show you again is the Guide Me feature. Now this is something which is really great, especially if you are a first-time user of Hive Manager. If it's something that you're not that aware of how to maybe configure something or where you need to go, you simply click on the Guide Me feature. If you want to show how to provision an access point, you simply click on Help Me Provision My AP, set up an AP with a simple network policy. What this does is this then basically holds your hand and walks you through the processes needed to onboard your devices and to then set up a simple network policy. It's a really great thing, especially if you're not entirely sure how to do something within Hive Manager. So that's everything from my side. The floor now to see if there are any questions. Maybe there's some questions that people might have asked. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to drop them into the questions box. And I'll just come back in a couple of minutes once you've got some questions. Okay, so we have one question already. So someone said, instead of PPSK, why would I not just use Radius? That's a great question. Obviously, you can use Radius. It's entirely up to you. But the thing with Radius is that there can be some difficulty setting that up. So Radius can be quite a complex thing to create in the first place. The great thing about PPSK is that it's really great onboard guests. So I already showed you earlier on the NG Kiosk app that we have. You can simply place that in your reception area. The guests come into the network. Not only does it look great because you've got this application that looks specific to your business, but it's a great way for them to onboard. They feel like they're actually just doing it themselves. There's no overhead in terms of having to speak to someone. You can simply type your details in. And with Private Appreciate Key, it gives you the flexibility to do that for your guests. The other complex thing about Radius is that not all devices support it. So Ben mentioned earlier on about IoT. There are a lot of devices that don't support A2. And as a result, Private Appreciate Key is a really great way to onboard all of those devices, because every device supports Private Appreciate Key, because it works exactly the same way as Appreciate Key. Another question which I've seen, I think, from Mark around the maximum number of supported connections on an access point. It's typically the same across the access points, and in fact across the industry in terms of industry access points and how many concurrent connections you can have on an access point. You have theoretical limitations, and then you obviously have practical limitations. In terms of theoretical, you'd be looking at up to 100 concurrent connections per radio on your access point, but obviously that number isn't very realistic. It really comes down to what applications users are using on the network. So typically, if we're seeing lots of voice and video, we wouldn't recommend any more than sort of 30 to 35 devices concurrently connecting to an access point at any one time. And then that number obviously increases depending on exactly what applications or what data is being streamed on the network. So it can be anywhere really up to 50 devices on an access point. We wouldn't recommend any more than that per AP concurrently.
Thanks, Ben. We have another question. Someone said, I'm really impressed with the simplicity of the... Are there any special ports needed for the management system to control the access points, etc.? Now, our access points use the CATWAP protocol, which uses UDP 1/2. The great thing about that is if that port is not available, you can't open that. You can simply use HTTP. So you can use port 80 to open that, and that will then allow the access points to connect to Hive Manager. We have another question as well. What makes Aerohive different than other enterprise cloud networking vendors? So there are a couple of things that Aerohive do which are different to other networking vendors or other cloud networking vendors. One thing that we have is a TPM chip. Now again, that's something that Ben again went through earlier on his slides. A TPM chip stands for Trusted Platform Module. A TPM chip on an Aerohive device basically encrypts the network credentials, the user authentication information, and any keys to protect the network should the device be physically taken or tampered with. So from a security perspective, this really is quite crucial. I know it's obviously not often that someone might tamper with something. To cowboys who like to think that they are networking gods, and they like to see if they can do certain things. With Aerohive, you can rest assured that anything that's on your devices, anything that's on your Aerohive access point will be completely encrypted. Another thing that we do that's different, which is the licensing side of things. So Aerohive don't actually deactivate any access points should your licensing expires. So if you were to qualify and receive a free access point from Aerohive, you would receive a 3-year entitlement key with that, and also access to our Hive Manager platform. Once that 3 years expires, if you want to renew any licensing, the access point would continue to function as it was previously configured. The only thing with the licensing is that once it expires, you then won't be able to log into the Hive Manager interface. You won't be able to make any configuration changes, but the access point will still continue to function as it was last configured.
So there's another question from Ian around what we can do with the data collected via the app, and can the business use it for marketing purposes. So yeah, as Trevor mentioned, there's actually a number of different ways you can collect data. through the application, if we're talking about the guest application, you can ask for certain things like email. You can ask effectively any questions you really want on there and collect that information, whether that be email addresses, phone numbers, for marketing purposes in that sense. And then you can report on that data, export that data and use it for marketing purposes. We also have a social login way of authenticating users. So we can pull information from customers, yes, Facebook. I'm sure many of you have seen it before when you're connecting to SSIDs, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and other social media outlets like that. We also have integration with Euclid Analytics. So what that effectively is we're able to collect information on devices even when they're not connected to the Wi-Fi. So it's anonymous collection. Every time a mobile devices are constantly pinging and broadcasting for wireless connectivity, our access points are actually able to pick that information up. It's encrypted via the MAC address, so there's no privacy issues. And we're simply able to look at how many people are coming maybe into, if we talk about retail again, into a store compared to how many people come by, how, the dwell time, so how long people stay within a store, and then compare maybe locations to one another as well. So there really is a lot of information that we collect on the back end. What we do is we work with partners and we work with our customers to build specific tailored applications that can obviously benefit your organization, how we can help you benefit your organization through the data that we collect from our access points.
There's quite a few more questions, but I'm conscious about time because it's now 11 o'clock. I'll just answer one last question, which says, can your solution integrate with Active Directory and LDAP? Yes, it can. So you can integrate our solution with your Active Directory server should you have one. You simply use Radius to do that. Again, if you have any questions, then you're more than welcome to email Ben. I think Ben and Trevor will be able to give you their details.
Absolutely.
If you do have any technical information or any further questions that you might have, send them over to Ben, and I'll be more than happy to answer them should you have any.
Perfect. Thanks for your time, everyone, today. I'd like to thank Keith and Trevor also for taking part in this webinar. As Keith mentioned, we will be in touch very shortly. It'll either be myself, Trevor, or one of the other guys in the UK sales team who will reach out to you to answer any more questions, discuss your requirements. I understand many of you are, of course, existing Aerohive customers already, which is great, and then move the conversation on further. So once again, thanks for your time. I look forward to speaking to you all very soon.
Thank you.